We're good.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Michael Gillespie. I direct the Center for the Humanities in an Urban Environment, and I want to welcome you to, I think, a very special presentation, and I'm very grateful to the Theater Department for providing such a distinguished panel and for giving us some insight behind the scenes on the production of a terrific performance today. The idea of behind this series is to talk about the way technology and the humanities work together and to make us a little more aware of that conjunction. Thank you very much for coming. I won't take any more time. I'll turn it over to Tony and let him begin the program.
Well, again, thank you to everybody for helping to set up this event. It's exciting to be able to talk about the technical side of theater. We share stories using design, technology, and enhance the events that we saw earlier tonight. So we have three awesome, amazing panelists here. I'm going to introduce them. The idea of technical theater and technology in theater is so big. We sort of got three experts on a couple different parts of theater, and they're going to sort of go through talking about, or beginning with, what technology is in theater. And for that to sort of speak, we have Professor Chris Goslin, who is our instructor of technical direction. After we sort of touch on some of the technology, we're going to jump over to Mr. Steven Lopez, who is the scenic designer for this production. He's going to talk a little bit about the technology we use here in this production. And then Professor Michael Yanni, who is an associate professor of directing and also a playwright, to talk a little bit about how we use technology in storytelling and how we use it to share with an audience and enhance the world and the story that we're sharing with an audience and experiencing with an audience. So jump on into Professor Goslin.
Okay, well, we use technology here to help enhance that environment that you guys are watching out on stage. So what you hear, what you feel, what you see. So we use technology to help bring those elements here to help that audience put their belief in what's happening out on stage. Traditional stuff that we use scenically, such as here on stage, we use a fly system to fly stuff in and out. We can use things on lower technology side, like on casters, to move things on and off the stage. We can track things, put things on tracks to have them slide on and off stage. That's just what you see visually. And also what you hear. So it's not just coming out from one side of the stage or always from the same speaker's sound. They do some speaker placement to help you believe where these sounds are coming from. Or we may actually build items that we have a stage crew backstage using to actually give that realism and that sound of things happening, crash sounds and doorbells and buzzers and such as that. Lighting-wise, so you guys can actually see that environment and actually feel like you're in that time of day for that actual period and that's happening out on stage. So some of those traditional things and where we're going with technology. We're going with all computer design, so computer-aided design. Or we're using technology with hydraulic lifts, so we can actually move the stage. Either the Cirque du Soleil show or Fuerza Bruta, and you can see these pools and the stage actually moving, and that technology is enhancing that experience for that audience. Flying rigs, so we can fly actors all over the stage. And moving forward that way, using digital technology, we can use our iPads and our iPhones to actually control soundboards and control light boards, so we don't have to be sitting directly next to a control board to actually control those environmental things that are happening out on stage. And moving towards that fact, lighting-wise, using LEDs and moving lights, so we don't have to use 300 to 400 fixtures up in the sky. We can use lesser amounts of fixtures that can do multiple things, that can move the light, can change the size of the light, the intensity, can use patterns out on stage. technology is constantly moving forward to help that audience feel like they're part of that story that's being told on stage.
So with that idea, Stephen, what sort of technologies did you use for fleeting right here? What, talk a little bit about some of those things Chris just touched on.
I would break it down into two parts. During the design process, there's a lot of technology that I use just to be able to communicate with the others involved in the production, like computer-aided drafting, as I was saying, or 3D modeling. I was in Texas while I was designing the set, so we were able to communicate. A couple of years ago, I would have to draw by hand and ship it, and that would take much longer to do. But also, using technology as part of the design, also it helps. Using technology, especially in scenic design, allows us to make the set as much as a character as some of the characters in the play itself. Like the rotating bed, using kind of some light bulbs and the signs to give an idea of what time period we're in.
Can you talk about the technologies to rotate the bed on stage?
We use Reggie. I don't know if Reggie's in the house. One of our stage hands, he's underneath the bed, and we have a system of lights that the stage manager will say, she will put on a light to say stand by and someone's going to jump onto the bed, or a green light saying rotate the bed. So we have a gentleman under there waiting just to get the call.
So he's laying on his back, pushing the
Yeah.
bed as fast as he can.
Comfortably. He has a yoga mat, some books, some notebook.
Well, I can elaborate on that. Instead of putting wheels or casters onto the floor, we actually reverse the casters, which you guys will get a chance to see here later, on cubes, so that way it doesn't pick up any dirt. So that platform that's actually on top of these rigid casters that don't swivel can rotate on top without picking up any debris. And it creates a smooth surface, so we could put 8 or 9 people on that moving platform, and it can still be put in motion without too much effort.
So just being able to use simple technologies makes some interesting effects in theater space. And what's unique about it, it's live theater. We're seeing the use of technology in live theater and just gives it a whole new life.
So something like that, right? We could have used a motor on it, right? And use some more advanced technology to make that happen. What led you to that choice to have somebody underneath the bed?
When you have somebody underneath the bed, you don't have to worry as much about a malfunction happening. You could be on call, say, don't do it yet, something's going on stage, and then be able to deliver when to give the okay to make the move. So and like with using a motorized, like, it might be smoother, it might be quicker, it might be cleaner, but it's easier to manipulate when you have somebody in full control of it.
If I can add to that as well.
I'm so touched.
It's a safety issue as well, because we're in a learning environment. We could make it automated with the DC motor with limiter switches to have it stop automatically and go. But like Stephen said, if something's happening on stage and we have to have a hold, it's easier to tell our crew member to hold. So we don't have an actor halfway on the stage and halfway off the stage going in between that wall and the bed. So also as a learning environment, we like to let the students try to figure out any troubleshooting on their own too, so we don't have professors standing over them all the time. So to bring that safety issue back, if it's manually operated, they can have that hold, so they know they're not going to crush someone on stage. All those professors aren't hanging over them, we're letting them learn as they go.
But that's in the case of this set, say in Circus SLA, where they have a 300-ton platform, you're not going to use manpower for that, you're going to use technology, you're going to use hydraulics, and use much more complex systems to be able to do that.
About 100 times our budget.
Well, I was going to say, also being able to use a rigging system, we can give the audience a perception of location change. You see, we have Christie plus sign in the back, but the moment we drop that sign closer to the foreground, we've already completely changed the location. And that's thanks to the use of the rigging system.
Jump on.
Yeah, I think there's really like 3 factors don't get points for showing someone the same show that you showed them 5 years ago. People always want something new. They always want something more powerful. 2, theater is always under-resourced. There's never enough money. There's never enough time. So you've got this need to keep doing more, to innovate, to give them something new. But on the other hand, you're always limited with your budget unless you're Cirque du Soleil. And 3, which works against both of these, which is that people do not come to the theater to see machinery moving around. You come to the theater to feel in contact with these people who are on stage. So on the one hand, the technology wants to give you something new that you haven't seen before, because face it, the human body can only do so much. You know, we can't keep making the body figure out how to do new things, but we can make the technology do that. But there's never enough money, and you still want the people to be in the foreground. And through that, over the years, all sorts of, and please forgive me, I'm getting over a cold, so I may cough a few times. But those are really the forces that are always driving the development of technology. You know, in theater, we always want to, as we're trying to show you something new, what it means is often using technology in ways that it's not used ordinarily. Because we still want the human in the foreground. So when various types of lighting technologies or sound technologies, for the most part, when you're at home, you want to hear something really wonderful on your stereo, or whatever you have these days. I'm such an old man with this. But in the theater, you still want the human voice to be in the foreground, as opposed to the recorded sound. And so we're starting to we use the same technology that people are using in their homes and that are being used in film, but we're using it differently because we're still trying to keep the human as the central figure, which means that it's a slightly different thing. I mean, like, I think, you know, have you ever had the experience that you see a film and there's a story that really ought to move you, but you see the CGI and it doesn't? And that's kind of, I think, a lot of times the issue we're facing, which is, it's a problem in film. I think in theater we have it easier because there always will be that direct human contact. But it points out the issue, which is how do you keep moving people with the story with people while using all of this stuff that we have here. You know, and over the years, what's happened, or over the centuries, I mean, there's been all these rigging systems devised, different types of lighting. You know, if you've seen, some of you, if you've seen a play 10 years ago and then see now, the way plays are put together are completely different as the technology evolves. And I think that, and I think that it's going to continue to happen because the world keeps developing new technologies, which we are going to always absorb into the theater to find a way to use them to do something that would be too difficult or too expensive if we did it any other way. So I think that's kind of where I'm going with this.
Well, yeah, like Professor Yanni here says, we want to help tell the story. We don't want to distract from what's happening with those actors on stage.
And actually, as a director, okay, I have to make a choice because the thing that, like, my job, designers and technical directors, they figure out how to make all this happen. But then they kind of present it to directors like me or Philip Church, who directed today's show, and they say, okay, we can do this. We can make the bed spin in this way. And we can make the frisky puss, the frisky puss sign light up with this kind of light. And then it's up to Philip Church or me to say, yes, I like this. This is helping to tell the story, or no, that just seems too much, or that takes us away. And so ultimately, like, with the to really look at how the technology is being used and decide, is this going forward with the story? Is it bringing the story closer to the audience? Or is it removing them? Is it like bad CGI where it's going to keep them from being involved with the story? Which is kind of a nice, I mean, I feel a little funny being here because my position in a way is to be a little bit ignorant because I'm the surrogate for the audience. I look at what they present me and try to see it the way an audience is going to see it and try to respond the way an audience would respond as they're working to find the best way to use the technology to tell the story.
As a playwright, sort of shifting gears from a directorial standpoint, as a playwright, have you ever written anything where technology has played a major role or something that you, from sort of the foundation of the story, has been a part of that?
Yes, actually. I mean, this is like, I can actually think of two stories which I think are kind of a good illustration. One was actually, this is long ago, and I know this seems now completely old hat, but the idea of doing a live musical play. I co-authored a musical play, and at the time we made the decision to not use live music, and this was back in the 80s, and that was really an unusual choice. Now I think it's a more common one, but it was the only way we could do this show with a budget in the type of theaters, in the theaters where we were playing it. And that was really not common, and of course now it's become very common. And what happens is it's always, and we were like, I'm talking, this is small potatoes, this is like, you know, a 75-seat theater. But what you often see is the smaller theaters start using the technology in some new way, and then eventually it moves into the largers. It doesn't always work that way, but it often does. Another case, which is more, I directed a piece and worked with the author who's a solo performer. And it was one of the most powerful uses of technology that the lighting designer found this way to do something, which was that the piece began with a lot of joy. And it was a piece that was done sort of outside the theater, where there was a dance and music, and the audience was made to feel happy. And then this really great, James Brown music played as the audience came into the space, and lights are just flashing, and you could hear the audience as they took their seats. They were happy, they were laughing, they were talking. And over the course of about 3 minutes while they sat down, you could just feel them stop talking. You could almost feel the depression come into you could feel the joy being sucked out of the room. And it was the use of LED lights. As this started, as the audience came in, the lights were colorful and they were changing colors, and there was joy and movement. And then as they sat down, it more and more moved toward a kind of like the feeling of a fluorescent light, which y'all know, like being under fluorescent light, I think is the worst thing ever. It's like the worst part of working in an office. And as the light went towards being more like fluorescent light, everyone responded the way you do in an office, which is you lose your sense of humor, you don't want to talk to anyone, and everything becomes drab and depressing. It was something I had never seen anything have that kind of impact on an audience, like just immediately. And what's great about it is, like, okay, probably shouldn't say this in the theater, but actors screw up. Sometimes, or maybe the audience just doesn't like them that day, or whatever, and so things can change, but a lighting cue always works. A piece of technology is something you can always depend on.
But not today.
But there is something about that gives a real firm base to the performance, and also I think to the actors in the performance when it does work, and it does, 99.9% of the time. It works, and it gives them a secure base to work from. it's not all on the shoulders of performance, although I think as an audience, it always feels like the actors are doing everything, doesn't it? I don't know. When I'm just watching a show for fun, I always feel it's like the actors are doing everything. But the truth of the matter is that the technology that's backing them up is really allowing them, it's giving them the freedom to be in contact with the audience. And it's allowing them to make the points that they need to make. Nothing can kill a laugh like a bad lighting cue. An actor saying a really funny line in the dark will never get a laugh. An actor whose mouth you can see moving because they're being lit adequately will get the laugh. And so, because I don't know, like when you come in, I don't know how civilians are, but it doesn't, you're not really conscious of things like lighting and technology affecting the performance that much unless something goes wrong. But I think that it actually is absolutely vital, and it absolutely keeps the event on track and has a huge, huge, huge impact in how you respond to what's happening on stage. Getting back to as a playwright, whether that makes a difference, I'm not sure it does, because what the technology does today is what it has always done. Right now I said the actor needs to be adequately lit. Well, 1,000 years ago I would have said the actor needs to be positioned so the sun hits them. It's still the same idea. And as a writer, yes, I know I can make things move a little faster because I can get a blackout and get somebody to come in on a track or something. But it doesn't actually affect the base of what the real work is. And so no, it doesn't affect as much as you might think.
Thinking about the cleaner here, to jump back over to Stephen. A lot of the technology that was used is sort of technology that's been around for quite a long time, right? Fly systems and casters with wheels. We see that for quite a long time within the history of theater. Is there anything that, like going back now, that thinking about more advanced technology that you would add to the play that you think would help tell the story better or differently? Is there anything that you would maybe next time out change from a technological standpoint?
Things that might change.
Or Chris, from a technical standpoint on your end, as the TV of this production?
Well, what I find that's creeping its way more and more into theatrical performances is video projection mapping. So adding some projectors to create some scenery items, not your traditional just screen with a projector on it, but actually giving you some movement and items. On Stephen's large Paris background, that would be a perfect spot to use some of this projection mapping.
Yeah.
So that frisky puss could have lit up by multiple projectors or had some other lights and pieces of scenery that would pop up on that black background.
To piggyback off that, actually, originally in my design, when they were speaking Spanish at the end, I wanted their subtitles. I'm sorry, but the director decided to do like the time of the period where they would actually have cue cards. So that, and doing that, it's a little bit more human. It connects with the audience that way. But either way, it would have been,
So the choice was coming from the story internally to say, this feels like it fits the world of the play in a more appropriate way than the more advanced technology. Maybe.
Well, that time period, they were also starting to use film projection and stuff like that. So it's still either or. Would have been a great decision. Yeah. But yeah, that was just like an idea. That's something I would have probably liked to see tried out or have done. Until next time I design the show, who knows?
Also, if we had unlimited funds, we could have created a hydraulic lift to plug our pit staircase, and then that stage could have gone down and moved away, and then the stairs would have reappeared.
I'm going to jump into some thoughts here. I've been working on contemporary theater lately, new plays. Michael and I were talking about this earlier, that a lot of playwrights now are writing plays where we have iPads and cell phones, right? And what's interesting, and we'll see some of this later in the season to sort of plug our season with Dead Man's Cell Phone, that there's technology on the demand of the real world technology that we have. There's a company that has been working to create an app just to make iPods ring on stage, to make phones and cell phones happen in a much easier way, right? Rather than having someone say, oh, here's my iPhone, you can use this for the production. There are apps and things that can fire from the sound for the shows being run off of a Mac, off of a computer, that same computer can fire sound effects from an iPad or an iPhone or an iTouch or anything that can connect into a wireless system. So there's actually companies that are developing these technologies right now. Jumping back to what Chris was saying, a lot of the stuff that we're controlling in here is computerized now from a sound and lighting standpoint. I can control the light board from the iPad or my iPhone. My phone's in my office, but I can control the system directly from there. Even if we have moving lights and other technology that's a little bit more advanced, can go right into the iPad and start making selections and making choices. As tech is happening, right, as we work on adding the technical elements to the production, or even while the show is running, I can run the show from the iPad if I wanted to. So.
Yeah, less than 90 years ago, you would have a group of people pulling levers to change lights, and now we have one person pushing a single button. So yeah, technology is really
After hours of work.
yeah.
What kind of questions do you, as an audience, have? What sort of things would you like to know more about or have questions about?
During the scene at the Christie Puss, where everybody was just running around in chaos and the lighting, the Christie Puss sign and the curtains and the. Tell me about any malfunctions you might have had, or if there were any, or how did you guys make that happen so smoothly?
I'll let Chris talk about how smoothly. Today, the curtain got caught. So there's a bit of a scramble backstage, right? Which everybody on the panel wasn't back there for. I caught the end of it. I found out what was going on. But it's live theater. We have to adapt and move quickly, and things happen, right? That's the fun part of going to see live theater rather than going to see a movie of a Flea and Her Ear, right? So you got to experience that and share that energy with everyone on stage, being a little bit ready to anticipate. So talk a little bit about, I guess, sort of to get back to that, of how things were choreographed to make all those changes happen.
Well, it's done in layers. So the director does all of the blocking for the actors. And then once they've had their rehearsal period, we'll get into a tech. So we'll start with a technical weekend, and we'll do it step by step, adding the curtain, adding the rotating bed, step by step, adding those layers and putting it together, and then doing it over until it's right. So that weekend, we do practice and practice and practice until we do get it right. But like today, something happened. We had a curtain catch on one of the light bulbs on the frisky post. So just like the actors have to improvise if something doesn't go right, so the stage technicians are backstage trying to figure that out to get back to that smooth transition.
How many times would you say we ran through that scene change during the tech weekend? From Act 2 to Act 3, the non-intermission break where there was some singing and some jokes.
We spent a good chunk of time doing that over and over. Whether it was to get it smoothly, if a technician did one thing wrong, we reset, did it all over again. If an actor missed a cue line, we'd stop, reset all the scenery and do it again. So we probably ran it 10 times on a Saturday, and then probably another 6 or 7 times, back and forth on that Sunday, until we got it right, until we could walk away and go, we're comfortable that you guys can handle it.
So even with the advancements of technology, you still have that human error. There's always that possibility of human error. The great thing about what we do here and why we practice so much is so that when that does happen, we know how to counter it, we know how to adjust and adapt. So.
Other questions?
Well, I have a question, but
In some of the original designs I did, I was hoping that we could slide some walls away and swivel some walls, but once you start getting into the actual building process of it, sometimes some of those things aren't possible. So like, for example, under this is hollow ground, and there's an orchestra right under here. So some of those things we can't do just because of the architecture of the actual space. So then we have to figure out what is it that we can do. Like a lot of these walls, one of the walls that was on this side of the stage, is actually behind this wall, somebody just wheels it out. And this wall here, this one actually gets lifted back and pushed out.
We get into different space constraints,
Yeah.
like because there's other scenery back there. If that wall was there to slide in and out, it would have had to have supports or it would have fell over.
Yeah.
So the supports would have been too big to include our conservatory, our white window building. So we have to give and take. Oh, do we want it to slide down, or can we just put it on a wagon with casters and actually wheel it out of it? So it's a give and take when we decide that. Also, we have constraints that in our proscenium opening here, there's actually a fire curtain. And due to code, we can't have anything living in that space. So if there ever was a fire, heaven forbid, that space has to be clear so that curtain can drop and seal off the audience from what's happening on stage.
And
So different codes.
And the thing is that I think a lot of times, just all theater buildings have specific physical constraints. Unless you're in someplace like the Opera House at the Arch, which is designed for a touring production, a large touring production, just sort of coming in and sort of slide itself in. Every theater has to deal with these really practical issues of the size of the theater, the height of the theater, you know, the space, how much space there is to throw light, how much room there is to store scenery. And even in the larger theaters, like I know that there have been some productions that can't tour to certain houses because the set is too heavy for the floor, for example, or, you know, these sorts of things. When you,
A, B, and C set. So we have to go to our C because we can't get B in onto the stage.
and sometimes that's why one show will end up going to the Broward Center rather than the Arch, or the Arch rather than the Broward Center.
As a scenic designer, if I have the opportunity to walk in the space, that is the first thing I do before I do anything else. Because if I were to design this show for the black box, it would be entirely different. If we had a significantly larger stage, maybe it would be 2 floors, it would be 3 floors, it would be completely different. Not that I would.
3 floors.
Well, also you can see how big our stage is. It's pretty good size. We have 38 feet across here. But once we walk off the stage proper, off to the backstage wing area, there's only 10 feet. So if I have a 15-foot wall, I don't have 15 feet off stage to put that in. So we gotta get creative. How are we gonna place it so you guys can see what we did with the walls from Act 2 to 3?
What's also interesting about that thought of why not have the walls move in a different way is that movement tells a story. Now for this, the grand drape is in, so we hide the scene change, right? So we don't see that. Now if the grand drape had been out, the big red curtain, we would have to make some more choices about that, which may have changed some of the technological choices of are things going to slide in and out because the audience is going to see that change happen, right? So from a storytelling standpoint, that may direct some of the technologies used or the choices that are made as well. You can, but there are people on stage that have to move the scenery and they have to see a little bit too. So there's always a give and take there. A lot of theater now doesn't hide the change, right? They let that be part of the event and choreograph it just like a dance, so that it is part of the story that's being told. Here though, we use the technology of the grand drape to hide it.
And I think there's more and more a trend where often even the limitations of a particular space can be embraced. Like a lot of, I know in New York, a lot of shows that move from off-Broadway to Broadway, most notably the musical Spring Awakening, they moved from a really limited space that was an awkward, bad, hard space to work in. And when they went to Broadway, they actually duplicated the awkward space. Like the same lack of exits, the same, bizarre thing. I think that, and this is, I've seen this, I think Hamilton is doing the same thing. which is they're actually kind of taking the limitations of the original space with them and saying, yes, we could do this bigger, we could do this in a way that is, more flashy or more, uses more moving parts, but we're deciding to keep it simple as it was in the original space it was designed for.
There was another hand sort of in the back. No? Any other questions?
I would like you to go back to your idea with regard to this subtitles, and I was curious to know if you would have had it all through the show or during only the parts like we saw a little bit with the cards here. The reason why, because I find that recently when I'm watching Netflix, not only the foreign film have I been looking at subtitles, but now even the English film, I like my subtitles on, and I'm getting a little too used to it maybe, but it means that I don't miss any of the dialogue, where before the action might have, distracted me, or mainly because I'm afraid I don't hear. But I'm curious to know how you would have used it today, because there was a lot of action.
I would only use it for the climax at the very end, because that's what resolves the entire story. If we continuously have subtitles, if you're going to focus on reading the subtitles, the display really focuses on the physical activity between all the characters, more so than even the dialogue. It's really the physical action that they take. So if I were to do the subtitles, it would just be at the end when they're just speaking Spanish entirely, and the other characters don't even know what they're saying, you know what I mean?
So it was sort of for the joke for this.
Exactly.
Which definitely the direct choice.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's me. Unless you design might say something else.
Other questions? Thoughts?
I really, it was interesting, back to that conversation where you said how lighting plays a large factor in setting the mood for the audience. I really appreciated the design for the Frisky Puss and the design for the Chandler pieces. Yeah, that's the guy's name. The Gentleman's Home. Yeah, so you went from this high class mansion per se to this low, dirty, kind of sexual type tone, and it was interesting, especially with the drapery and the way that the set of the hotel was set up. I really enjoyed it. That's how.
But that wasn't only just the set design, that was also the lighting design for the show.
Because really, during that scene change, the only thing that's different is this wall goes away, another wall comes out, and some drapery comes out.
Yeah, I noticed.
It's really the lighting that really helps set the mood, because we're dimming down the lights, we're making it look dingy, and then we bring the curtain down to make it a bit more claustrophobic, to feel more like an apartment building more so than a mansion. So that's some of the things that happened there to create that effect. So I'm glad it worked out, man.
Other questions?
Well, the set design, in a way, make it easier for, I don't know the name of the actor, but who played Wilberforce and Chandler, so you can get around easier if you change.
I definitely took into account that there was a lot of costume changes, so I wanted to make sure there would be areas in the back where there could be a team of people, like, here's your jacket, put on your hat, put on your vest, figure this out, go. It's a whole other play in the back, the whole other story going on behind the set. So yeah, I took into account that they're going to be doing a lot of moving around.
I have a question. As far as his name is when they go behind, well, this is in the motel part, when they go up the stairs and go behind other areas and they go behind the doors, how, where, I don't know where they really go, they go up the stairs and stuff like that, where do they go? Exactly, how does it how is that being in, I can't even think this was what I'm trying to say,
Where do they get a seat and what's back there?
What's back there? Well, there's some empty spaces, or say when you go up the stairs, the silhouette of Paris blocks off, and the masking and the curtains that we bring down to block it off, blocks the actors walking back, and then there's an escape that they could just go down, and then they could come back in from wherever they need to come in through. That's really planned out during the rehearsal period with the director and stage manager. that gives them an idea of where can they hide the characters when they need to be hit. So it's a very collaborative thing to really figure out how are things going to move around, how are things going to happen.
Well, like, as far as the stairs, do you use like some pull it in and pull it out, or is it just that?
The stairs are, they stay there. The stairs is probably one of the few things that just really stays there. It's the hallway that we
There's a
slide out.
hallway that comes in, and then the hallway goes away. That's in between the moving doors and the actual stairs. It's very tight. Very tight back here. So that's a moving wall.
Just using these simple technologies, we can create illusions of entirely new
Cause my thought was like, you bring the stairs and you bring the storage and you bring, you know,
that's what we want to have the audience think, like, how do they do that? What do they do? And usually it's a very simple solution. It's just moving on.
Either magic.
It is math.
Other questions?
I like the detail that you put into the hotel room specifically. All the little decorations on the tables and stuff. I specifically wanted to know where you would find such hard things to find in this day and age.
Well, we have a prop storage where there's plenty of knickknacks. So we just go in there and we see what would this person have in their home. The scenic painter helped me a lot with this because he was like, we need to make this look more like somebody who lives here. Like somebody, so I was like, oh, well, we have this theater glasses, let's throw that on there. It's like, can we find a bell so we can put it on the lobby desk? So there's a lot of back and forth on that. And just sending people to the prop shop, like, hey, I found this. Can we put it somewhere? It's like, yeah, find somewhere to put it. And we just go in there, it's like, I think you'll put it here, I think you put it there. So, or like the painting.
There is some research involved in it.
Yeah, there's a lot of research involved, like especially with the time period and stuff like that. Like when selecting the paintings for this location, I wanted the paintings to kind of explain the story as well. So I went online and used the database that we have here at FIU of where you can specifically find sections of time and paintings made throughout. And I found these paintings that I felt described the story. That guy hitting on that girl. The girl's like, oh no, listen. You know, that's kind of like Cornell and Maria. Miss Chandler's. Or this lady who's falling asleep outside. That's Miss Chandler's being bored and just creating drama.
How did you create those paintings then, once you had them?
Once I found those paintings, a lot of the paintings that especially in the Frisky Plus, I had to use Photoshop to edit them to fit the color palette of the scenery. But what we would do once I find the painting, I would just resize it using Photoshop or GIMP, different photo editing programs. Then we print it on a plotter, the same printer that we use to print out our drafting ground plans and stuff like that.
It's just a big, large format printer.
Yeah, it's just a really big printer, print them out, stick them on some foam board, and find frames, paint the frames. There you go.
Another resource that we have and can use. So Stephen was lucky enough to find the props that he needed, right, in our prop storage. But 3D printing has become a huge resource in theatrical setting for costume pieces and props as well. We didn't need to use one in this case because he found what he was looking for, but 3D printing has opened up the opportunity for directors and designers to really find maybe that piece that they can't get or that they can't find because it's not something that you would be able to locate at a thrift store here in Miami or something like that.
And now they have 3D printers that can print out objects 3 feet large. You're printing 3-dimensional objects made out of plastic. So I'm hoping to get my hands on one of those in the next few years because that'll make my job way easier.
Any other questions? Yes.
Just small detail. In the back, it's like this thing. It says chat noir. Is that like black cat?
Chat Noir was actually a club in Paris. It was a very in the script, the location is called the Frisky Puss. So since it's called the Frisky Puss, we put some cats in there, and then those jokes that were innuendos or wordplay using Frisky Puss, etc. There's kids in the audience, I don't think.
So it was there in the script, it was something that the
Yeah.
player had made a choice about, that you then took choices.
Yeah, since in the script, this location was called the Frisky Puss, I wanted to use that cat symbolism because it's kind of almost cheesy, but that's what gives it the humor. The cliche of it.
All right,
Is there like a website that you go to where other designers kind of collaborate and talk about ideas and things like that?
The university, yeah. Talk to the other
He
students.
talks to a lot of his current and former students.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's forums online as well where people talk to each other. YouTube is a huge help for me. Anytime I don't know how to make something or build something, I just go to YouTube and see if somebody's done it before. And there's so many people online now that 9 out of 10 times you're gonna find.
And there's like weird stuff, like, cause, I'm old enough that, years ago, if I wanted to like look at a designer's work, I had to make an appointment or they had to mail me their portfolio, which was usually this huge thing, not worth it all online. Old news. But people are starting, I'm finding like people, like, YouTube instructional videos and blogs where people will talk about things they made. I don't know if you see this so much, but like a lot of designers, I don't know if it's, not just designers, but I see some designers like putting like just instructional things online, which is really cool because, 20 years ago, it was, figure it out for your darn self.
And there's also events like USITT where it's students go and present their work to each other, but there would also be companies presenting new items that they have, new products that they have, new paints, new plastics, new everything. And if you can think of it as in the entertainment business, they'll be there presenting it. So then we go there with our notes like, oh, this is cool, I can buy that. This is great for doing this is great for doing that. So yeah, nowadays it's a bit more open about teaching each other how to do specific things.
USITT is the United States Institute for Theater Technology, and there's a lot of things that are incorporated into that organization from a technological standpoint, but also from a design standpoint. And they have design competitions and things on a regular basis for all of this technology that Steve was talking about. Last year, or the year before, they had a very cool scissor lift, or a zipper lift, where it's a round drum and the pieces of metal interlock as it raises up. And they had, for the play Medea, had the end moment where she rises up into the clouds. The sky had this moment where they used this zipper lift to raise this person up. And they present all of that cutting edge stuff at that, they do a yearly conference. And students are there, professors, professionals, all sorts of people go to share information, to share that, their research.
That's pretty neat because you have students coming from all over the United States meeting up. And you can hear the challenges like, oh, what challenge does somebody in Alaska have when they're working on outdoor theater? And people like us here in Florida, we have to worry about salt water in the air, rusting the materials. So you learn a lot in those events that you wouldn't typically learn just from picking up a book or Googling.
Any other last questions? If anybody is interested, oh, there's one.
Sorry,
Yeah, no.
I just want to know how long did it take for you guys to make all these decisions from, deciding, yes, we're gonna make this play to, knowing this is what I want to do?
The season selection is typically sort of in the spring semester, so we know what plays we're going to be doing in the spring semester of the next academic year. But when did you start working on this production, Stephen?
I believe about 3 or 4 months ago. So, it's all a blur. Like as soon as you find out what play you're doing, you just do it. You just work on it, exchanging information. You completely lose all sense of time.
But there is a process. We started meetings before we summer, he was doing some of his designing while still keeping in contact with Tony back here on the East Coast. He was in Texas and keeping in contact with me, which I was on the West Coast. So that technology of email and putting drawings back and forth.
Dropbox has
Oh
revolutionized.
my God.
So we were keeping in contact that way, before we got back in the fall, where his final designs.
Yeah, and as soon as we got back, it was just construction, building. It was,
But there's like phases that you start off just talking about the play, what does the play need, what is the feel, what are you trying to evoke in the audience, and there's that whole section, and once the designers and the directors have had that discussion together, then it's like, okay, how are we actually going to do this? And then that's the more practical set of meetings that you have, and those are the ones that are easier to do long distance
yeah.
than the first ones. And then like, finally, I mean, I'm sort of coming in here and saying this, but then there's like the final phase where you're actually building things, and it's all about like the actual materials you're doing, and how are you dealing with the fact that now in rehearsal you realize you need 2 extra feet to get over there, and can we move the door over there?
Yeah, there's a set date for, this is when we need the final ground plan, but even as you're building the set, changes happen. You know, it's like, hey, we can't do this because we didn't notice this cable was gonna be in the way. So on the fly, you have to be like, all right, well, let's do this. Let's talk to the director about it. See if he's gonna do this. It's a very collaborative.
So we started talking in April. Some of the work got done over the summer, solidified right before classes started, and then, like Steven said, we started building right away.
Yeah.
We map out how are we gonna get this done in time, what is some of the give and take, some of the budget issues. So everything's a negotiation as we get to this point, where we open on Friday, this past Friday.
Yeah, our process here is about 15 to 16 weeks, right around there, right? Summer sort of throws that off, but we like to leave a lot of time so that that discussion can happen, that depending upon what is going to be taking place on stage, we can find the right choice and have enough time to plan and practical.
Well, I must say you did a spectacular job, and it was really good.
And it's never always uniform either. Like when I was designing 6 characters in Search of an Author, we took about 3 weeks before we all came to a decision of what the actual play was about. You know, this one was a lot more. As soon as we read the play and got together, we were pretty much on the same page from the get-go. So you never know how it's really going to turn out until you're sitting all together with the rest of the cast and crew.
Excellent.
So let's, for those of you that are interested in seeing backstage, you're welcome to make your way up here. I just ask, be very aware of your surroundings, and leave props and things where they are, right? Especially with the open pit and the edge of the stage, please be careful. And as we move through the backstage area, there's cables and stuff. Generally they're taped down, but just be aware of your surroundings. I'm gonna turn on some more work lights and things. But if you'd like to join us, you can come up here on stage. But just in a formal way, again, I'd like to thank Michael and everybody for setting everything